There's gonna be a meeting. Yeah. Way over yonder. Where we
won't have to cry no more.
Oh my Lord.
We won't have to cry no more.
I tell you, we won't, church.
We won't have to cry no more.
Hi, and welcome to another segment of KISS. That is, keep it simple, sir. Keep it simple, senorita, senora, sister. We think of another day. We come in your home. Let me tell you, you do not want to miss this production. This production is special, informative, and I guarantee you would wish you had called all your friends and said they are on the air again, right here on DSTV. Now, my special guest with me today is going to bring some information to you that I'm sure many of you have never heard or knew, right here in our own backyard. But first, I'll let him take a minute to introduce himself, and then we'll get the show on the road. God bless you. We'd like to welcome today on our production, Superintendent Robert Stewart.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Bishop, thank you for having me today. I'm Robert Stewart, Superintendent of the Charles Young Buffalo Soldiers National Monument, located in Wilberforce, Ohio.
Okay. Praise God. And it's such a pleasure, praise God, to be here. Did he say Buffalo Soldier? Did I hear?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you heard that name sometime, somewhere. But we're going to learn more about this today, right here on KISS. And you know what KISS means? We're going to keep it simple, that you can understand, that you can learn. And we trust and know that you also will enjoy our production today.
Yes, sir.
Always, and you know I love, because this is a Christian production, I like to have a biblical scripture somewhere, and there's something always to fit everything we do when it comes to the Word of God. And taken from the book of Psalms, 27th chapter, 1 through 3rd verses, though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. I am still confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Praise God. And today, I'm being a vet myself, and we really respect, you know, the veteran. I thank God for each one of you that you see a veteran and you said we thank you for your service. And often I said we thank you also for your appreciation. We appreciate that you appreciate us working together. That makes a great bond, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, it does.
And in our community, and I know you have so much to share with us, and as we said a little bit earlier, so many local people live here for years and not even realize the things we have in our backyard that others travel thousands of miles just to come to our area to see.
That's true. That's true. And in fact, a lot of folks in the Wilberforce, Dayton area, they know us as the Big Gray House on U.S. Highway 42, where the Charles Young site is located. General Young's home has been a staple in the community for many, many years. In fact, in the past, it was known as Young's home. Basically, anyone who came to the Wilberforce area during the time frame when General Young lived there, they would stop in, check in with the family. They would spend time with the general or his family. It's a very special place. He owned about 80 acres of land. We own now 59.64 acres of that land, and we do things on the grounds. We have a pond. We have walking trails that we're developing, and we're just going to be recreating the park to how it would have been during the time of when General Young was here. We're currently going through a major renovation, but I can talk about that a little bit later on.
All right. And the thing, a whole idea was it that to make the museum out of his home there?
So
when it got started?
So it was actually a proclamation by President Obama back in 2013, and we became the 401st National Park Service site. There are now 423 sites in our country, but we were the 401st. So we are the home and the farmland itself that he operated.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But it's interesting because we have a dual story. Our story is not just about General Young and his family, but also the Buffalo Soldiers. Of course, you know, the 9th, the 10th Cavalry, and the 24th and 25th Infantry that served our nation proudly with distinction and honor from 1866 all the way till about 1952 when they were totally integrated into the rest of the United States Army.
Oh my, that's a blessing. And he was the owner of this land even at the time?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you travel to the area today, people still grow a lot of corn and soybeans. And I always ask, what do you think General Young grew?
Cotton.
I get that a lot, but corn and soybeans as well. Now, I notice I just said Colonel Young. He's been known as Colonel Young for so long, but last year on November 1st of 2021, he was actually promoted to the rank of Brigadier General.
Praise God. It would have been a blessing for him to see that, wouldn't it?
It would have.
Okay, it's a lot going on. You mentioned the store, and is it like a museum? Is it like a museum? It is a museum.
Yes.
But it has a store for souvenirs and information.
So it's funny. So right now we're going through a major renovation. We started that process in the beginning of this year, and we're going to restore the home to how it looked during the time when General Young lived there between 1907 and 1922. Okay. And since we are a one park with 2 stories, we're going to have General Young's story on the first floor and the Buffalo Soldier story on the second. Of course, when you walk up the steps, that's going to be the connecting tissue that brings it all together. With General Young being the highest ranking African American at his time during World War I, and also leading the 10th Cavalry with the Buffalo Soldiers, and also being part of the 9th Cavalry, and also being a military attaché, being professor of military science and tactics. There's so at Wilberforce University. There's so many things that tie this story together to everything that's going on, even to this very day.
My. And just think about, we're just a few miles up the road from Dayton, Ohio. It's about 17 miles, and I'm sure there's so many right here. We hear so much about, I know it's a motorcycle club that has a title,
yes, they
Buffalo
do.
Soldiers.
Yes, they do, yes.
A lot of times when we have the annual 911 drive,
yes,
and we often look for to see, but it's such a beautiful thing to learn. Was it, you said that General Young was the one that was in charge?
Yeah. Well, there were different segments of the Buffalo Soldier, but he led certain troops. He led troops while in the Philippines. He also led troops while he was a part of the punitive expedition. He trained troops right at Camp Grant, Illinois. He trained troops with the Ohio National Guard when he was assigned to them for a while. He also trained troops right on the grounds of Wilberforce University. That was the first military science and tactics program that was created to train African Americans to become military officers. Because after all, with the Buffalo Soldiers, they were originally black soldiers commanded by white officers. But General Young, he was tasked with the responsibility of creating that next officer corps of African American officers to lead the Buffalo Soldiers. His program, I would like to mention, is still in existence to this very day. It's now known as the Marauder Battalion, ROTC, and that's on the campus of Central State University, but it also incorporates students from Wilberforce, Central State, Cedarville, and Wittenberg University.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the actual location being right here in Ohio.
Yes.
You hear about the Buffalo Soldiers, General Young. You hear about all these things, but how many times people go to visit or get a chance to learn more about such?
So we, right now, since we're going through the major renovation, and we're so thankful that Payne Theological Seminary, they have allowed us to use their library for the past year, but we were getting thousands of visitors coming through every single year. We also do a lot of outreach. Like Kaiser Elementary School in Dayton, we often partner and work with them. We have given education packets out to students in of course, Yellow Springs close by, Faribault, Beaver Creek, Dayton, Ohio, and even as far away as Lebanon. We give out information about General Young and the Buffalo Soldiers. In fact, this packet I have right here is an example of some of the information we've given away as far as the brochures, our trading cards, our historic audio walking tour. All that information is available at the park, and also for people to check out online, along with our General Young movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Praise God. I mean, this is so interesting. I'm always a leader. I'm always excited because there's so many things. Ohio is a great place. Inventors, writers. I mean, we are so rich. I can understand why they call it the Gem City.
Exactly. And it's funny because a lot of times we look at these historic figures as just people who kind of stood on their own. But when you look closely, you see that they all kind of knew each other or knew of each other. Paul Laurence Dunbar, of course, was celebrating 150 years of his existence, his work, his life. Well, his life's work is still being honored this very year, 150 years later. General Young and Paul Laurence Dunbar were friends.
Okay.
And of course, with General Young being 8 years older than Dunbar, it was like a big brother, little brother friendship.
Yes.
We actually found a letter recently from the National Afro-American Museum and Cultural Center, which is also located in Wilberforce, Ohio. A letter between Young and Dunbar stating that how their mothers hung out together, and that's really, yeah, you know, if two mothers of two sons who are friends are hanging out together, that means they're very, very close.
Yes.
So it's of course with Dunbar, then also having a connection with the Wright brothers, and then Dunbar having a connection with Frederick Douglass, and also with Young having a connection with Booker T. Washington, and also with the boys. All these folks know each other, all had connections with one another. And it's amazing to see.
Oh, I still look at Dayton as a small town.
Oh, okay.
And believe me, it's almost like everybody knew everybody. We got a lot of guests in now. But usually when I was in public transit, they said, you ought to be a tour guide. Because I said, you talk to me long enough, I'm going to know your grandparent, your cousin, sister, brother. And I'm sure it was even more so during that time, that being the minorities and so forth, they knew one another, a close knit. Go ahead.
Yes, that's what, like earlier when we talked about Young's home, so many people stopped through that house. So many people wanted to come and see the Young, and see General Young, talk to his family, and he would impart words of wisdom and it's different things to people. One of my favorite stories about General Young has to deal with his military life, his home life, and his life as a professor. Now, if you talk to his wife, Miss Ada Mills Young, she would say Charlie is the most kindest, sweetest, most loving person she's ever met. He could fill a room with laughter. He could compose a song off the top of his head. She would say that about him. Now when you talk, that's his wife. So when you talk to his soldiers, they'll say this guy was tough. This guy ran them every day. He drilled them every day. He was on them every single day to make sure that they knew how to properly, handle their weapon, how to conduct themselves as soldiers, and also how to be the best Buffalo soldiers they can. So you have someone that said he was very, very rough and very, very tough, but someone said he was very, very sweet and kind and loving. But when you saw his students would say he gave a lot of homework. He was always on us. He was always making sure that we were, in tip-top shape. But on Sunday afternoons, he would invite us over for cocoa. And he would have the students on his front porch, and they would either sing some songs or sing church songs, or they would either just have a place to just relax. But come Monday morning, it was back to work. So he knew how to balance his life for being a soldier. Discipline, exactly.
And a lot of times people don't realize that even though we have a position that we are dedicated to, there's a human side of us.
Yes.
The love, the kindness.
Yes.
I was talking to a friend. What about the Beast and the Beauty and the Beast? Regardless of how big or bad someone appears to someone, there's a human side of them.
Yes.
And when you start singing songs, maybe gospel spiritual songs, or that, and I think you say he was a Baptist.
He grew up in Ripley, Ohio, where he grew up. So I'll go back to beginnings. He was born enslaved in Mayslick, Kentucky. His father, Gabriel Young, escaped and came to Ohio, and he served with the 5th U.S. Heavy Artillery, USCT of United States Colored Troops during the Civil War. 5th U.S. Heavy Artillery. He actually was stationed in Vicksburg, Mississippi, after the siege of Vicksburg, but he was there in 1865. After the war, they came back, and General Young grew up in Ripley, Ohio, small town. You have the story of John Rankin, who was a Presbyterian minister who helped to usher people to freedom, him and his family. I think he had about like 12 or 13 children, and he would help people. You also have the story of John Parker, who's also an abolitionist who lived in Ripley, Ohio. And General Young grew up there. He played the piano in the Baptist church growing up, and he had these different people in his life. Of course, like the Rankins. They helped to create a abolitionist town that helped so many people escape to freedom. And I think that's so amazing in the life of General Young, that he was able to grow up in a place like that.
Yes, yes indeed. And I was thinking as you're sitting here, always we sort of forget And I'm not giving you, but the spirituality, the praying, the devotion, keep the moral values at a special place that we don't sometimes have today. I was thinking, even I mentioned earlier, the Wright brothers. You don't hear much about it, but their father was a bishop, and he was a pastor of a church. And those things, out of all, I believe with my whole heart, all good and perfect gifts come from above. One of the things I often, I know there might be a question here, different things. The name Buffalo Soldier, going back to the Indians and so forth, that them looking like the god of the buffalo and so forth. Do you have any take on that?
So, oh man, I've heard so many different stories. So we have to say, according to folklore, it was given to the African American soldiers by the American Indians or Native Americans, if you will. The name Buffalo Soldier because of some say it's because of the woolly hair, some say it's because of the fighting spirit of the buffalo, how it's a very, very hard animal to bring down. But it was a name that was given to them, and I remember a young man telling me the term Agashika Tatunka, which means man with hair like buffalo, and that's where that term came from. And obviously it's stuck because now we've been knowing them as that for the past almost 100 years, and also the site with the name Buffalo Soldier.
And I heard once that they said they would not fire upon that black soldier back in the day early because they was getting used to thinking he was some type of god of the buffalo. Oh yeah, well it's a lot of different stories. Yes, exactly. But you know, the things that I think about, I'll share it here, I share it in private for years. The Indians, were they really Indians? And the question is, when Columbus was looking for India, for spices, which his voyage was funded by Spanish, he was looking for a shortcut to India. So when he come upon this continent, he thought he was in India. So he said, I found a shortcut to India, and those must be Indians. Now I hear people more say, oh, the Native Americans, because maybe they weren't what we thought would be Indians earlier.
So we are, that's one of the things that we talk about at the site, where we try to get everyone's story. Yes. We want to know what people want to see themselves as and what they want to be referred to. And from talking to many different nations and different groups, they mentioned the actual name of their group.
Yes.
And that's something that we are looking and going to be incorporated into our site. Because after all, we are going through a major renovation. We are developing the museum from the ground up. And we want to make sure that everyone has their story told accurately and responsibly. Yes. So we will be incorporating that side of it as well.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes, sir.
Always education.
Yes, sir.
As well as entertainment.
Yes.
And sometimes the two come together. You can be entertained and also educated at the same time.
Yeah, because we have amazing rangers that do wonderful programs that talk about what it would have been like to be a Buffalo Soldier, what it would have been like to be in the military during the time frame of 1866 all the way up to 1952, what these guys would have seen, would have traveled, and of course with General Young being a cavalry officer, of course they rode horses. So also we tell the story about General Young and his horse. He had a horse, multiple horses, but the one that we know is the one Blacksmith. And that's the one that he rode from Wilberforce to Washington, D.C. to show that he was physically fit enough to command troops during World War I when he was medically retired. And the interesting thing about this ride and the horse is that a good officer, a good cavalry officer, was expected to be able to ride 20 miles a day. There were some times where General Young, on his ride from Wilberforce to Washington, D.C., rode over 32 miles a day. Yeah.
You know, that was interesting. I was talking about in the ministry. A lot of things are a lot different today than they were then. A lot of our presidents and leaders actually fought with the men in the military during war. Even all the way into biblical days. King David, Solomon, they were actually in the mix. So likewise, you're speaking like General Young. He was not sitting at home behind a desk or some office. He actually were with his man on the battlefield.
Yeah, so it's interesting because one of the images that we have would be of General Young in his uniform as a major. He only really wore that fancy uniform every once in a while. He always liked to be with his soldiers. He always wanted to be with his men, and they nicknamed him "Follow Me" because he would lead them into battle, or anything that he was doing, he would be right there with them. And there's one of my favorite images of him is when they were at Sequoia National Park, and you see him when they were making those old routes, making the old route into the giant forest. The sequoia tree is some of the largest trees in the world. And General Young was right there with his guys as they were paving that way. There's an image of General Young when he was up in Yosemite in the middle of the winter time. And you see him right outside there with his troops, sleeping right by the same fire in the tent with his men, making sure that everyone was safe. Like I mentioned earlier, they said that he was a very strict tactician, but he made sure that his soldiers were taken care of, and he made sure that he was doing everything he needed to do to make sure they got back home.
Man, that's the beauty I had even when I was in the service. My goodness, we were young men, and they said, "Knock me at 20, soldier." But I look at this old guy here, drop down to do 20, and say, "Well, man, if that old man can do it, why can't I?" And that by example, not just by telling someone what to do, but by example of being able and willing to do it to and with you. We are losing some of that today in a lot of leadership positions, not everywhere, but in a lot of leadership positions, we do not have a lot of people willing to not only tell you what to do, but to show you and be there with you. As I said, be there at the hospital with you, be there on the battlefield with you. And whatever they're asking you to do, I'm willing to be there too.
You know, so it's interesting, like General Young and his soldiers that he trained, that he was right there going through the process with them. He would often have them go on assignments with him later on. When he went overseas as a military attaché to Liberia, he would have people he trained right there with him. So it wasn't just he spoke some words to you and let you go. He would help you out throughout his entire career. So I've been saying General Young and Brigadier General Young. He was just promoted to that rank last year in 2021, but chronologically, the very first African American in the United States Army who achieved the rank of Brigadier General was Benjamin O. Davis Sr. And he was a young sergeant major under General Young back when, you know, at Fort Robinson. He helped him. He would give him advice. He would basically show him what you would need to do to become a military officer. In fact, Benjamin O. Davis Sr. wanted to go to West Point. He wanted to be just like his mentor, General Young. Unfortunately, he was not able to go. But he pushed his son, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., to go to West Point. But back to Senior for a quick second. After General Young left Wilberforce University as the professor of military science and tactics, Benjamin O. Davis Sr. came in after him and took over the regiment and helped to keep it going. Benjamin O. Davis Jr., back to the son, when he graduated from West Point, like his father and his father's mentor, he became the professor of military science and tactics as well. But however, not at Wilberforce University, at Tuskegee University in Alabama. He then went on to graduate from the War Training Services pilot program at Tuskegee. And he went on to command the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. So you see the mentorship of General Young on the father, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., then transitioned on to the son, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., who then went on to become a African-American general in the United States Air Force. He retired a 3-star general, but he was brought back out of service, and he was advanced to the rank of 4-star general before he passed away. So all these things still kind of connect to the legacy of Charles Young, the Buffalo Soldiers, and the story that we tell at our site.
And that's interesting, because I never knew that Davis come under Young. That's interesting, yes. So much information we can learn, isn't it?
That's true, that's true.
And let's take a moment here. I'd like to, we have a clip of coming to your place there, and something that you probably get a chance to see. You want to mention something about it before we look at it?
So yes, this is a introductory film that we show at the Charles Young Buffalo Soldiers National Monument. It's a way of getting people kind of caught up on some things with the story. It talks about General Young's life. It talks about what he did while he was in the service, and it also talks about just the overall history and legacy of the park. So, yeah.
All right.
The year was 1864. The United States was mired in a costly and bloody civil war that had split the country over many issues, namely slavery. The Union was gaining traction on its momentum after the recent victory at Gettysburg in 1863, and as General William Tecumseh Sherman began his march to the sea.
Our fathers brought forth on this continent.
1 year earlier, President Abraham Lincoln provoked both sides of the country with his announcement of emancipation, freeing all slaves in Confederate lands. However, slavery continued to thrive on the Confederacy side of the split country despite the paper proclamation from the Great Emancipator. Tucked away in the small Kentucky farming town of Mayslick, a child was born to an indentured couple in a small cabin. Charles Young entered the world on March 12, 1864. Despite being born to enslaved parents, which also made the infant Charles a slave himself, he would never have to experience the stifling degradation of being a slave, as he and his parents would make the short trek across the Ohio River into Ohio just a few short years after his birth. Charles Young's childhood began in the Ohio River town of Ripley. Raised by loving parents who valued and knew the importance of an education, he would excel in academics and vault to the top of his class by the time he graduated from the integrated high school in 1881 at age 17. Shortly after the conclusion of his secondary education, he was admitted to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1884. As only the 9th African American to enter the academy at that time, he would endure 5 long years of constant shunning and open discrimination from fellow students and faculty. Despite losing a year to a poor performance during his freshman or plebe year, he would overcome the obstacles and regain his academic composure to become only the 3rd African American at the time to earn his diploma and commission in 1889. 5 years later, in 1894, after serving with the Buffalo Soldiers of the 9th Cavalry on the Western Plains in Nebraska and Utah, Young received a detached service assignment to report to Wilberforce University in Wilberforce, Ohio. Once there, he would teach the university's military science and tactics course, which prepared young African American men for future service in the military and in life as well. He quickly acclimated to the social and intellectual scene as he befriended many, including fellow teaching colleague W.E.B. Du Bois and notable black poet of the era, Paul Laurence Dunbar. The 3 of them would forge a friendship which lasted the rest of their lives. After the death of Young's father, Gabriel, in 1894, his mother would relocate to Wilberforce to live with her son as he began his teaching at Wilberforce University. Together, in 1907, they would purchase a house just west of the Wilberforce campus, which he would affectionately nickname Young's Home. The house would become the hub of social events around the university, and the Youngs always welcomed friends, family, and strangers alike. Despite his absences, Young's Home would remain the social hub of the university area and Young's permanent residence for the rest of his life. It was also the place where he could escape the harsh reality of the world by losing himself in his music and in his collection of books from around the world. Among the highlights of his stoic military career, he would lead troops heroically in the Philippines during the Philippine-American War, and years later in Mexico during the Punitive Expedition. In 1903, he would become the first African-American superintendent of a national park, when he and his troopers of the 9th Cavalry managed the lands of Sequoia and General Grant National Parks in Northern California. The work that he and his men achieved that summer exceeded the total amount of work accomplished by the last 3 summer details of Army troops combined. Many of the roads and trails that he and his men constructed proved so sound that they are still in use today. In addition to being a decorated combat soldier, Young was also one of the first soldiers to be assigned as a military attaché in Haiti and Liberia. Building on the knowledge and construction experience from his days as a national park superintendent, he led workers in Liberia to develop and improve the nation's infrastructure. For his impressive and dedicated work in Liberia, Charles Young was awarded the NAACP Spingarn Medal in 1916, which is presented to an African American who demonstrates exceptional achievement and contributions in their field. Young would go on to serve the country with honor and distinction the rest of his life. Although being medically retired in 1917 for questionable medical reasons, he did not accept the decision and would go on to fight to be put back into active service. Late in 1918, after the war, he was placed back into active duty and then sent back to Liberia to resume his duties as an attaché. While on a field assignment that sent him into Nigeria, he took gravely ill and would succumb to a devastating kidney infection, dying on January 8, 1922. At the urging of his wife and other notable figures in society, Young's body was repatriated to the U.S. in 1923. He received a full military funeral, which included public street processions, culminating in a rare memorial service in the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater. Afterwards, Young would be buried in Arlington National Cemetery alongside the thousands of other heroes who share the solemn lands. In spite of the overt and egregious racism he would have to deal with throughout his life, Charles Young ascended through the military ranks to become one of the most respected leaders of his time. A well-rounded man, with a steadfast devotion to duty, he led by example and inspired generations of new leaders. Then and now, the legacy of Colonel Charles Young lives on. Learn more about Colonel Charles Young and the famed Buffalo Soldiers when you visit the park's website at www.nps.gov/CHYO and also on the park's social media web pages.
Wow. So much information.
Yes, sir.
Shared there. And I was thinking this is another one of the stories that circulate with those that, when I say ignorant, it means not having a knowledge of.
Understood.
What we had fighting men. Many times we said we thought we were just service people. Most of the men were cooks. But today, and some there at home probably learning, we had fighting men.
Yes.
Fought for the freedom of what we. Go ahead. I know you have a lot.
Yes, yes. There were Buffalo Soldiers that fought in many different engagements across the country and across the world, and you know, they're all part of the same force, same fighting force. And yes, you did have, not to diminish the work of the cooks and the folks who were there, but yes, they were Buffalo Soldiers who fought. Yes, in fact. The Executive Order 9981 that integrated the military. It's because of the work of the Mumford Marines, the Buffalo Soldiers, the Triple Nickel Tank Battalion, the Tuskegee Airmen. It's the reason why President Harry S. Truman signed that executive order to integrate the military, because there's the work of people who fought side by side, or people who fought segregated units that fought for this country. So it's something that we talk about at the site as well, and we talk about how some of these stories they haven't been told. We make sure and we let folks know that the Buffalo Soldiers, along with many different groups, all served in the military. We even have a special segment that talks about African Americans that served in defense of this nation, even going back before the American Revolution. So it's an interesting story. It's something that's still developing and changing to this very day. It's still being added to. In fact, with General Young just becoming a general last year, you know, the story is still going on, and the work is still being done. Like one thing I like to talk about is that, you know, next year for us will be our grand reopening as a national park. Okay. There'll be 10 years that we've been in existence since 2013. But even with that, since 2013, I always like to talk about our partners, like Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Central State University, and Wilberforce University. They're our legislative partners that work with us every single day to make sure that the park is growing, the park is being seen as a very important place in our community and also in our nation. We are going to be celebrating 159 years of General Young, and also we will be commemorating 100 years since he was reinterred in Arlington National Cemetery, where General Young and his wife are buried to this very day. This is a major renovation, taking the house all the way back to how it looked in 1907, but also this is going to be a springboard into the future, where we can have students from all across the country, or people from all across the country, come to the site and take part in education activities, take part in leadership academies, taking part in activities that will help to enrich their lives. The same way how General Young poured into the lives of his students or people he came in contact with, in the same way how this site will be able to pour into the lives of people that travel to us from all across the nation. It's amazing. When we open those doors in the morning, you never know where you might see someone, you know, visiting you from. We have folks from Utah today, from Omaha, folks from as far away as California, just today coming to the site. And you know, everyone keeps asking us, when is the site going to be open again? When are we going to be able to go back into Young's home? And we're keeping everybody posted. We're still in the middle of the renovation. We're still in the middle of the renovation, and we're still developing everything out, but we will be open again, a full-fledged national park. But in the meantime, people are still able to visit us at Payne Theological Seminary's library, the Bishop Reverdy C. Ransom Library. We're open 7 days a week, 8:30 to 5, where people can come in and take part and learn this legacy, and even watch our movie again.
And it's beautiful. I'm listening to you. I hear so much of this at other museums that has something to do with our people in this area. From California, you just said just today, visitors to what? The Young house, and how many people live 17 miles? Never been there.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, with us being such a new place and getting out there and sharing the word about the park, we're seeing folks from our area also come and check us out. And the funny thing is, when people come to the site, even though the home is the actual Young's home itself is closed, but the park is still open, we have folks that stop by and say, you know, I drove past the house every day, but I never knew that was General Young's home. You know, I remember I met someone who went to who went to Wilberforce University back in like the 80s, and they said, yeah, I remember hearing the stories about that being the general's house, well, Colonel Young's house at the time. He was said, but it's great to see that it's now open as a national park, and we can hear about it because it not only talks about the Buffalo Soldier story, not only talks about General Young's story, but it talks about the local history as well, about this community and how it was seen as just the social hub for the Wilberforce community, a social club for many people to come and visit.
Yes. And how is the studies? We have school, education, the college. Do they have any programs where they have assignments even maybe to come?
Oh, yes. Because we work with the history departments at the universities, and we also have students from the universities that have interned with us in the summertime, and they've developed programs and projects about General Young. In fact, in the packet, you'll see some trading cards, you'll see some a walking tour, a cell phone tour, also a bookmark on all the national parks in Ohio. Students from the universities actually developed that, and they help us to get that information out. And it's funny because the interns that we have, you will see them take just a stack of brochures, and they'll hand them out to the students on campus, and they'll talk to the students about General Young. And everyone that says, hey, I'd love to come and do an internship there, or I'd love to learn about the National Park Service from the work that we're doing right here. So I just love it. It's making those connections from past events to current things that we're doing today to the future of our students and young people and people from all around the area who live in this area of Dayton that are having these opportunities because they can see and learn from the park.
And I love this. I'm enjoying this. We just come out of one of our Black Cultural Festivals. Oh yeah, that's weekend. One of the Marlon Shackelford, one of the things he often tells us and tell the group, we need to pass a torch to the next generation. And one thing, he had a lit torch, not a torch that's going out. So the thing you're talking about is keeping a lit torch that passed on, which we didn't have except by word of mouth. Yeah. But now where we can actually go and enjoy, get more detailed information.
Yeah, and see it right there in front of you. And the funny thing is, like, the pictures that we have, they're all black and white photos, right? Sometimes people look at those pictures and they think, oh, these guys, they lived so long ago. They might not be able to have anything in common with me today. But when you sit down and talk to, when they sit down and talk to one of the Rangers, and then we tell them about General Young, we tell them about the Buffalo Soldiers, and we tell them about his family, they say, wow, I went through something like that. Well, General Young, for his first year at West Point, he had all his years, he had issues there, but he had to repeat his first year due to some issues with mathematics. Okay. And then we have students say, oh wow, I had issues with mathematics, and I was able to overcome those issues. General Young did the same thing. Yes. So it's like all those different elements of who people are can help someone understand, well, hey, if that guy made it through back then, I can make it through, and I can learn something today or grow today. So not just looking at the military side of who he was, but also at home, the personal side of how he mentored after he got good with math, after he learned it really well. He went on to tutor of the Buffalo Soldiers to be good at math. He was also an artist. He would also draw paintings or pictures as a way of relaxing, and he would pass these things on to the soldiers that he worked with. One story about him, even though he was a soldier, he was a warrior, he was a fighting man. Everywhere he went, he was always able to maintain a peace. Okay. And I always think that's so amazing. He was able to sit down and talk to people that he may not have normally had contact with or normally been in charge of. In fact, when he was at Sequoia, he was in charge of a wagon road of not only just his troopers from Troop I and M of the 9th Cavalry, but also civilian workers. He was in charge of those guys, and some of those guys may not have been used to getting orders from someone who looked like General Young, but he was always able to meet them and talk to them and get an understanding of, hey, this is what we're doing today, guys. We're getting ready to make this wagon road. Are you on this journey with me? In fact, his nickname was Follow Me. He would go along with them as they're doing the work. So it's just an amazing story, and it shows that everyone has a part to play, and we all have work to do.
And I see the gifted communicator.
Yes.
And that is the most important thing, being able to communicate one with another. And I'm glad you're sharing that every day, because see the heart of the leaders then. the heart, the love. A friend of ours, Papa Bing Davis, I carried a couple students down there maybe a month ago, and he set aside, I was out there looking at a distance, but he was teaching them art from the heart.
Yes, yes.
We are a loving heart people, and somewhere it seems that has been destroyed, purposely maybe, but that heart, that leadership, that care, that love for one another. Hopefully we can pass that to torch also back to the next generation. It's not always just being so popular, being so great, but we're great together when we are able to work together.
Understood.
As one.
Yes, sir.
Praise God, we're so glad to have, and we know you're involved in so much in other museums across the city, across the state.
Yeah.
And we may have to have you come back again.
Sure. You know, next year, 2023 is going to be a big year for us. We'll love to have you here when we open the park. And also to spread the word about not only just the Charles Young site, but also the William Howard Taft National Historical Park that's located in Cincinnati. The Hopewell Culture National Historical Park that's out in Chillicothe, Ohio. Dayton Aviation Heritage with the story of the Wright brothers and also Paul Lawrence Dunbar.
Yes.
We have these 4 parks in Southern Ohio, as well as there are parks in Northern Ohio as well, from Cuyahoga Valley, James A. Garfield, First Ladies, you know, Perry's Victory. There are a lot of different national parks, eight of them all together in Ohio. So there are a lot of things for people to get out and see.
I heard you mention Garfield.
Yes.
Right here in Dayton, we had a school here, the Garfield. It's so much information. It seems like you have tons
Yes, sir.
of wealth, of gold. Your wife had told me you had quite a bit, and we need to share. And the thing is, believe it or not, she told me you love what you do. That's important.
I do.
Not just doing it because it's a job. We all have income. We all have work. But when you love what you're doing, that makes the difference.
Yes, sir.
When you care, it's more care about it. And you want to share what you have. When you got something good, you want somebody to know about it, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else? We have some minutes yet here to go that you might be wanting to share that I may be overlooking in?
Oh, well, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are open. We are still open. However, at our temporary visitor center, the Charles Young Buffalo Soldiers National Monument is still open, and we are still being able to receive visitors at the Payne Theological Seminary's Bishop Reverdy C. Ransom Library, located in Wilberforce, Ohio, literally right around the corner from the Charles Young site.
Yeah. Well, tell me, how about for some of those that have transportation problems, older, is there any type of tour bus or any tours that goes there?
So we have, there is, right now, since we're a little bit off the beaten path, there are not really a tour bus area set up, but a lot of the things that we have it online as well. For people who may not be able to make it to the area, we have some information on our website, nps.gov/CHYO, which is our website. But we also, when people reach out to us and they ask us to for a tour, if they can't make it to us, we go to them. We've done programs at various libraries, schools, and we go and we speak to people, and we'll meet you where you are, so we can tell you about General Young and the Buffalo Soldiers.
It's so interesting. I just had to tie it together. So many things that take place right here in Dayton. And a young lady friend that we know recently have began to, when you were talking about Liberia, and she's now, one of her students had asked her to help him put the first library in Liberia.
Oh, okay.
And that's something ongoing right now.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you knew it or not, but Dayton is supposed to be a sister city to Liberia.
Liberia, yeah, that is true. That is true. So that would be really good if with General Young. He also was in Liberia for a time frame as well. So yeah, that's all these connections.
Yes.
All these connections. Yeah.
Yes. And that's the beauty in it.
Yes, sir.
Working together.
Yes, sir.
Even today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else we have to share today,
I'll save some for next time.
Okay. You know, all the time when I leave the show, I go, and you always think, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, that I didn't think about. But once again, getting in touch with you again.
So, nps.gov/CHYO, that's our website. And I'm Robert Stewart, the Superintendent of the Charles Young Buffalo Soldiers National Monument.
All right. And you at home, wherever you've seen this, take advantage. They've done their part. As the old people say, laid the foundation, opened up a way. Now it's in your court. Get out, learn, and live, and be blessed.
Tell how great He's been to me. Tell how good saved our soul. Gave us love, made us whole.